just going to get started. There's a QR code if you haven't done that yet. It'll be on the next slide. But additionally, there's some audio things that use stereo. So if you're on the far edge and you wanted to bump over, that's you might hear things a little bit better, but you can do that when we get to that as well. So I'm going to fade down the whole music. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about audio basics. Essentially starting off explaining what a PA system is and how that works, the mystery behind how microphones work, and then moving on to other aspects, the four parts of the PA system, what to listen for when you're setting up a PA system or speakers and things like that, and then some helpful tips for troubleshooting things that often come up. That'll be about the first 20 minutes or so, and then we have making great recordings. I spent some time as an audio engineer, and I have some little hints of advice on how to do that, how to have a good end product, what equipment to get, where to put it, and editing. And then we're going to do a bit of what to buy and how to keep it in good shape at the very end. So, my audio journey, I went to the University of Stevens Point, go Pointers, and I got my degree in percussion performance and music education, and my extent of audio education, this was about 6 years ago, was one day where my professor came in, plugged in a microphone like this into a speaker and said, "This is how audio works." And then that's about all I remember from that day, and I'm sure most of us have had the same experience, and probably much longer ago too. But unfortunately I also got into electronic music, music that uses electronics and percussion instruments, and that sent me down the dark road of having to haul percussion equipment and electronics around. But it also helped me out because I made all these videos and put them online. And when I was applying to grad school, I got a call from a good friend now, Philip O'Toole, and he runs all the recording at the U of M. And he's like, "Hey, do you want a TA ship? We'll give you a full ride, and all you need to do is like record things." And I was like, I think you overestimate how much I know about audio stuff. And he's like, "Well, I see that you're trying to do like some weird video picture-in-picture stuff." And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, it shows me that you're trying to figure out technology, and that's what I want to find in people that work for me." And I was like, "All right, cool." So then I spent the next 2 years learning everything that I know today almost. I still pick up more stuff, but it was a crash course in audio stuff, and we're going to hit some of those points. Since then, that was about 4 years ago, I've worked at the 10-man concert hall at the University of Minnesota, recording concerts. I've also worked as a corporate AV guy, so like the person that comes up and sets up this stuff and then leaves for conferences and stuff like that. I've spent a lot of times in the back of a room listening to people talk about medications I don't understand, and then turning the mics off afterwards. And I also had a stint as an AV tech in the Gopher athletics department at the U of M. As well as a lot of coffee shop gigs, and this all led me to combining percussion with that to run indoor drum lines, which always have a sound system, and through that I was able to work with the Farmington Marching Band a few years ago, and then now I work there during the day. So that's a bit of my journey where I am from, and you can learn all of this stuff too, so it is possible. So the PA system, it stands for the Personal Amplification System. It comes in a variety of forms, from the one right here that I brought today, what you see up in the top left corner, basically, to marching band PA systems, to giant rock concert PA systems. There's no recording in this system, so everything is open, and we'll talk about that more. But all PA systems have four parts. So there's a microphone, or really any input, so it can be playing music off your phone or something like that. But there's always going to be some input. It's going to go into a mixer, and I have a mixer up here. That mixer then goes out to an amplifier, and then the amplifier finally goes to a speaker. So we're just going to go through each of these parts real quick and explain how they work. It's similar to, like, for me, knowing which pinky keys on clarinet make the tube longer really helps me understand how that works. So we're going to just explain how a microphone works, and then you're going to be able to troubleshoot microphone issues a lot easier. So here we go. Microphones. 1 second. That's the wrong picture. There we go. Okay. So, microphones come in a variety of types. There's dynamic microphones, condenser microphones, and super random other weird microphones like contacts and ribbon microphones. The one you're going to see the most is a dynamic microphone like this one. This is a Shure SM58. SM stands for Shure microphone, and then I guess this is the 58th one they built, and then they call it good. But in any microphone, they all operate on having an electrical signal that comes out the other side. And that electrical signal, if we go back one slide, it's represented by the squiggly lines, and it works its way through the system. So any microphone, doesn't matter how expensive or cheap, creates an electrical signal at the back side of it. Yeah, so in this diagram, you have your, well, we call it a diaphragm. And it's essentially like if you've ever left a snare drum on in the back of your band room, you start tuning and it's instantly just buzzing like crazy. It's called sympathetic vibrations. And same principle in a microphone. We have a tiny, tiny snare drum, and we attach that to a magnet or a coil. And then that is then, the magnet is surrounded by a coil. And if you remember back to high school physics, if you move a magnet within a coil, it creates electrical current. And this is actually the same premise we use for generating power in power plants and things like that, but in a much smaller scale. So that's how dynamic microphones work. They literally move a thing, and it creates electrical current, which comes out the back side. The other type of microphone, oh geez, there we go. That one, which my animation didn't work. There we go, okay. Is the condenser microphone. These are generally more expensive and a little bit more delicate. They don't use a diaphragm, well they use a diaphragm, but they don't use the magnetic coil. They actually polarize two metal plates, and the diaphragm moves one, and the distance between the two metal plates creates a difference in electrical current, and that's what comes out the back. And so using this system, it's a lot more sensitive, whereas if I walk away from this microphone, which is a dynamic microphone, my voice slowly stops getting picked up. You can have a condenser microphone which will pick up things in the entire room. And so those are really good for recording and some other applications like that. Cool. I think we're doing great on time. Okay. Is there anything else on that? No, we're good. Okay. No. Yes. Okay, the mixer. This is probably the most scary thing that you see in your audio system. There's a lot of them, including the KitchenAid right there, which is a dangerous implement. Which funny, the KitchenAid, it's up there as a joke, but literally it does the same thing. It takes different materials, puts them together, blends them, and puts them out the other side as a lump sum. So all the mixers that are surrounding it basically do the same thing in different fancy ways. And I should mention, there's analog mixers and there are digital mixers. Analog mixers use little resistors and cables and wires and stuff to do everything, and digital mixers sometimes use that, but they mainly use computer processing power. And so generally if you have a mixer like in this bottom right-hand corner and it has a screen on it, it's a digital mixer. It can do all the same things as an analog mixer, so you can figure out how to do it. The layout might be different, and it can do like the universe more on top of that. So we're just going to talk about the analog mixer and explain that. The important thing to know is that if you look at the mixer on the top right, you have all of these sliders, and I'm sure we've all figured this out by now that each slider is a channel of audio that comes in, and all the buttons that go vertically work with that one channel. So we're just going to go through that channel, all those little buttons, and tell you what they do, and kind of how they're implemented and used in systems. Yeah. So this is a cutaway, probably pretty small to you if you have the following along on the online form, or sorry, the PDF link. You can zoom in on it. That's broken apart into two parts that are a little bit bigger. So I'm going to call this the strip. It's just a strip of things, knobs and inputs and things like that. But again, it's just the same thing across the whole system. So we're just going to go into the first one. So the very top is the input, and these are the cables. You have your XLR cable. This is a very common type of cable. It plugs into every microphone. It stands for, I didn't write it down, it's external line return. Essentially it has 3 cables instead of 2, and because of the 3rd cable you can do some fancy things. It has redundancy and makes it more reliable. But it plugs into all microphones. There's a male end and a female end. The male end is the one on the right, the female end is the one on the left. The male end goes into the microphone. I didn't name these ends. If I had my way, they'd be made by Apple and they'd all have the same ends and it would work, but hopes for the future. So then that's always going to go into the top. You can also input systems, input your microphone via a 1/4-inch cable. And we're going to take a small tangent right now. If you've ever looked at your headphone jacks, the ones that go from your earbuds to like your iPod or whatever, you will see there's a tip, a ring, and a sleeve. And that's the 1/8-inch cable, not a 1/4-inch cable. But the same premise is you have 3 different wires that go down that cable, and that allows you to have stereo, so a left and a right. If you only see a tip and a ring, that's your traditional guitar cable, that's only going to send you 1 audio signal, so it's going to be mono. So if you're ever trying to play a stereo thing through your classroom speakers and you look down and it's got only 2 parts to it, and it's an 1/8-inch jack plugged into your iPad, and you're trying to get stereo, that's why. You need a different cable. You can use tip ring sleeve or just the 2 parts in a mixer, and you put it into the 1/4-inch input at the top. The insert does some weird funky stuff, but basically the line input is if you're using a piano keyboard and you want to put it in there. It's a little bit stronger signal. Basically it'll work no matter what. You can kind of mess around and see what happens, but it's not going to explode, so that's good to know. Just keep your volume a little bit lower. Okay, this is probably the most confusing topic of my life, trying to figure out what gain really is. Gain is always going to be the top knob on the channel. Sometimes they call it trim or preamp, depending on where the mixer is made. I think the people in the UK call it trim. I don't know why. But it is, to put it simply, gain is the sensitivity of a microphone. It's not volume, although you can somehow use it as volume. But I like to think of it as a safety on how loud things can get. Anyway, a little bit more of an analogy. So if we have this microphone, oh, by the way, so I have a lot of things and I sort them a lot. So some of my boxes have badly drawn pictures of what's inside of them. And so one day I drew a microphone on a box, and that was my microphone box, and someone came in and said, "Why do you have ice cream cones in your office?" And I said, "Oh, those are microphones." And they're like, "Oh, that's weird." And so now I just say, I have on my box, it says microphones, not ice cream cones. But I think they still help with figuring out what gain is, and the fact that every microphone has a pickup pattern, depending on, actually, if you remember back to that diaphragm, how big and small that diaphragm is, how sensitive it's going to be in pickup pattern, and a lot of other crazy stuff. But the real microphone pickup pattern is more like that. It's a big bubble around the microphone. If you get in closer, you get picked up. So if you think about things that happen within this bubble, if it's really loud, it's going to send a big electrical signal. If it's quiet, it's going to send a small electrical signal. And you can adjust how big the output is by upping or downing the gain. To give you one more analogy, gain is kind of like if you're seeing light through your eyes and you leave your music suite and you go outside because you don't have you don't have windows in your music suite. You go outside and it's a bright summer day, and all of a sudden you get hit with all this bright light. Everything's going to be washed, right? You're like, oh my gosh, I can't see. Everything's distorted almost. That's similar to having too much gain. And then as soon as you get used to that and you walk back inside and your eyes are ready for bright light and it's all dark, you're going to have not enough gain. And metaphors only work so far, so we're actually going to listen to a bit of an example that I created last weekend. My girlfriend was very sick and I said, I need an audio example. And she's like, well, I play fiddle. I was like, okay, can you play fiddle? she got up and I held a microphone and she played a piece called Julie Delaney, which is a classic fiddle tune. And I used 3 different levels of gain. So the first level is the one that you see at the top. That's a good level. Nothing's peaking. It's kind of like we're adjusted. The next one is going to be, well, let's just hear the first one before I go on. Sounds like a fiddle. You can really hear the string being scraped on with the bow. I probably wouldn't use this in a professional recording. I think it's too close, but it sounds like a nice fiddle recording. The next one is if you have the gain up too much, and this is what is typically called distortion. It's kind of like walking outside. It's a little bit painful. So let's just hear that. And this is something you might hear in your systems as well. Unless you're playing like rock music, and then it's awesome. But so yeah, that's high gain, and that's obviously an over-exaggeration. You're going to really hear those little fizzle sounds. That's the telltale sign of distortion. And also, by the way, while we're on distortion can happen in speakers as well. And when that starts to happen, the real problems are about to happen because that means the speaker is going to break soon. So really, if you start hearing that sound and you know it's not your microphones, then there's some issues to be worked out with your mixer and everything like that. So just watch out for that sound and turn things down when you do hear that. The last one is low gain and not enough gain. When I was talking about gain versus volume, on the bottom of the mixer you see the little sliders, right? You know what I'm talking about? You can have the gain too low and push that slider all the way up, and it'll still be a good volume, although you're compensating in the wrong way because you're going to have too much fuzzy sounds from the microphone that you're amplifying. So this last recording is what happens if you have low gain and you're pushing it up artificially against the system. And then if you have 15 microphones that are doing that, you can't hear anything, right? So just watch out for that sound. So in general, when you're messing with gain, what you want to do, there's usually a spot on the dial that's like blacked in or colored in, and you want to put it there. And then you always want the slider, the thing on the right side, you want that to be about at unity. And so if you go up to unity and the mixer it starts feeding back, then turn down the gain just a little bit. But you always want to try to have your sliders be up towards unity, which is the U. Yeah, there you go. Okay. And if you have other analogies for explaining gain, come talk to me, because I'd love to hear them. The next thing that you'll see sometimes is compression. We're not going to get into it too much, but I love compression. I spent a lot of time doing coffee shop gigs where a lovely high school girl would get up with her guitar, and she's used to singing like this, and then you put a microphone in front of her, and she's like all doing this and back and forth, and I'm like, oh, I can't handle this. But what compression does is it basically auto does the slider. So as they get farther away, it'll make things louder, and then as they come in, it's going to drop it down. So you can kind of use compression in that way if you're doing live sound. The other thing it'll prevent, and I'm sorry, I don't know how loud this is, but if you say a P, a B sound, we call them plosives. If you say a plosive into a microphone, oh, it's not bad at all. If you do that in an auditorium, you probably hit the subs and everything is going to go kaboom, right? That sound can be avoided by having a little bit of compression as well. Chances are your mixer doesn't have that, and if it does, it might be a digital mixer. So that's compression. The next one is EQ, and we had a few people that did GarageBand classes earlier today, and they all talked about EQ a little bit, and it's not a whole new concept for a lot of us. Basically, it's taking the frequencies and you can adjust them, raise them, or lower them. Your standard mixer is going to have a low, a medium, and a high. So we use this graph. The low end is on the left, the high end is on the right. Basically, you're going to be, the top knob is adding or removing the high frequencies, and the bottom knob is going to be the low, and then the middle one is kind of a bump. So I'm just going to play a quick example of EQ. So I'm going to play an example of a piece of music by Steve Reich that I'm EQing in real time, and you can see and hear the effects of what you're doing. Now I'm going to slide, adjust, so I'm going to roll the low end off, and then I'm actually going to move it up so that you can hear it. Most mixers, the analog mixer doesn't allow you to move the EQ, it just cuts and raises, but some of them have a sweepable, it's called, so you'll see hertz or frequencies, and that allows you to cut it and then move it. So it really depends on your mixer, so just figure that out and you can use it. But here's a quick example of that. Oh, it didn't work. So a really short example, but you hear the low end get cut, you hear the high end get cut, and you saw the middle one, it made a bump, and then everything got a little bit more painful. You can also use EQ to do a few different things. One is prevent feedback. You're all familiar with feedback, right? It's where the sound waves of that speaker hit this microphone, and, well, hold on, I made a thing. So yeah, speaker hits microphone, gets bigger, hits the system, hits the speaker, moves over, hits the speaker, hits the microphone, and we all have a headache. So that's feedback in a very pictographical sense. But one thing you can do is you can find the frequencies that are most likely to feedback, and you can cut them out using your EQ. So oftentimes, if it's just a talk mic like this, I'll take the low end frequencies, something below 40 hertz, which are like the low end of a cello, and I'll just remove it, because there's no way I'm going to talk way down here. Like, there's no reason I would want to. So you can just remove those frequencies, then they can't feedback. Similarly, you can find other frequencies that are higher up and pull those out as well. And if you really want to get into removing feedback, there's a whole bunch of YouTube videos that you can watch, and I highly recommend do a little research before you start just trying to do it on your mixer, because you can break things quickly. The other thing you can do is you can make things sound more articulate. Like I just said, if I'm a low talking person, I can kind of remove some of that low rumble sound and have more of a higher sound. The other thing you can do, and this is my fun thing that I like to do, the T's and cut sounds happen about 9,000 hertz. So kind of towards the middle upper end of this scale right here. And so if someone's kind of talking a little bit like this, you can up that part, and then all of a sudden they sound a little bit more articulate, which can be helpful in some situations. So those are two things you can do with EQ that might help. Feedback, blah, blah. Come on. Oh, I have to play the video? I don't want to do that. Okay. Oh, okay, feedback. Oh, a few quick tips for feedback. One is just turn everything down. It's probably too loud, that's why it's feeding back through the system. So turn it down is a good one always. You probably are too loud anyway. I probably don't even need a microphone to talk to all of you, so you could just turn it down if it's too loud. You could ring it out, watch an online video before you do that. The other thing you can do is figure out where the microphone is placed. Some microphones have that pickup pattern, that big ice cream cone. If you point that big ice cream cone towards the speaker, straightforward, it's going to feed back more easily. So oftentimes what we do is we have our speakers behind us, and then, actually I did this today. I put the speaker right here and I had this microphone up there, and I was like, okay, cool, we're set. And as soon as I started talking into the microphone, I had this feedback was starting to sound, and I was like, okay, well, let's move the microphone over and find a better place for it. So another thing that often happens if you're like a choir and you're singing and you have a monitor because you need to hear the piano or you need to hear other people sing, is that you have your microphone right here, and then you put your monitor squarely right in front of it. And it's a little dangerous because there's actually a pickup pattern in the back of a microphone as well, and sound that comes out of that monitor, which is a smaller speaker, is going to hit my face and bounce into the microphone. So what I often do is I just take the monitor and I move it off axis, so it's coming in like this to the microphone. It's not going to pick up. It is going to blow out one of the singer's ears instead of both of them, but it's a trade-off. So this is, the speaker's right there, the microphone's right there. A quick fix is just to simply turn it right there, pull the speakers in front of the microphone, or turn in the axis so it's not going to be on it. Cool. All right, we're to the next few things on the strip of the channel, and that is the aux and the effects. And essentially these, you can do a lot of crazy stuff with them, but the main thing that these are used for is if you have a monitor and you just want to have one specific microphone, go to that speaker, and you can use the aux button and turn it up. The effects button, if I wanted to have a whole bunch of reverb or some kind of weird slappy delay sound on my microphone, I can patch that in. In general, you probably don't need these, and so you can just turn them all the way to the left, and then nothing's going to happen that you're worried about. So in general, if you don't know what a thing is, you can turn it all the way to the left or at unity or whatever, and things will be better. Cool, so those are aux and effects. The pan. Pan is very straightforward. It's just a left and a right. You get the idea. You can pull it off center. Some cool things you can do with this. If you're running sound and you want the soloist to actually sound like they're on stage left, you can pan everything to be a little bit to the stage left, and then everyone's audio picture will match what they're seeing. That's just the overdoer in me that says that. But yeah, that's pan. Okay. We're getting down to like the nitty-gritty save your life things. The mute button. I have had so many gigs where I start the gig, someone starts talking, and this happens, right? They're talking, nothing's coming out of the microphone, I'm like, oh, the mute button's on, idiot, right? So the annoying thing is the mute buttons don't have an industry standard if up is on or down is on. And sometimes if it's lit, that means it's muted, and sometimes if it's lit, that means it's not muted. So this is where you kind of need to know which mixer you have and what works. And I sometimes will just write little notes that says, button up is unmuted. Another thing to not worry about, but look out for, some mixers have a master mute button, which is probably tiny and over on the right side. There's a lot of good reasons for that. This mute button actually only mutes if I'm sending to the main set of speakers, but if I have a monitor for like the piano player or something like that, if someone talks into a microphone, these are muted, that monitor won't be. So a master mute button allows you to mute everything, but then they just put it in a hard to find spot, which can cause problems later. So if you have that, just know about that. The button under the mute, sometimes you have this, it's called the PFL, the pre-fader solo, pre-fader listen, or the solo button. This allows you to put on a pair of headphones and kind of go through and figure out which microphone's buzzing or who's talking weird into their microphone, and allows you to do that. But if you have that button pressed and you're doing sound normally, it really doesn't affect anything unless you're trying to listen through a pair of headphones. And lastly, the slider. Like I said, try to have it at unity. You you always want to kind of dip things down a little bit below unity to make it, I know that's my personal preference, some people raise it above it, but I think mixers, especially digital mixers, they operate a little bit better if everything's up at that level. The math is, because that's 0, so as soon as you lower it, it's -1 or whatever, and then they have to do more stuff. So I've just found things work better if that is the case. The other thing to know is that there's actually a slider all the way on the other side of the board, which is the master slider, so you always have to have 2 up. Cool. Any questions about mixers? No, we should have some time at the end if you have questions and want to come up and see a mixer and be like, oh, that's what he was talking about. But I'm just going to keep going then. So the mixer, which is probably the most complicated part of the system, of a PA system, then goes to the amplifier. So like I said, it all runs on electricity. This small amount of electricity that comes out of here, I probably couldn't even feel if I put it on my tongue like a 9-volt battery, but it does get amped up a little bit when it comes out of the mixer, but not nearly enough to actually work with the speakers. So what we have to do is go to an amplifier. These have to be on, and I've definitely started gigs where these are off, and you're like, the mixer's on, the microphone's working, and it should be working, but then you realize, oh yeah, the amps, which are often in a different room, a well air-conditioned room, are also need to be on. Sometimes you'll see these in a rack with a whole bunch of audio equipment. When I worked at the TCF Bank Stadium with the Gopher Athletics, we had a room maybe, it was about half the width of this room with amps here, floor to ceiling, for all the speakers in the entire stadium. And so someone had to sit in there at the end of each day and go click, click, click through all of them to save power. So that was a fun time. But just remember that your amps need to be in them too. Speakers, you probably you won't have any issues with speakers unless they're going bad. The main thing I want to talk about with speakers is that they're essentially a microphone in reverse. So they use a magnet with a metal coil, and they push a bigger diaphragm. And so that's how this whole system operates, is on electrical current. And you can go really into the weeds about what kind of speaker cone or this or that you want to use, but mainly the important thing to know is that there are different size speaker cones. You'll have a big one for lower frequencies, smaller and smaller. So the microphones that are in the ceiling right now are pretty small. And so when I found out that this clinic was going to happen in this room, and I was like, well, I'm going to play recordings from the U of M concert hall. They're going to sound terrible in there because we have all these low frequencies. So we brought this PA system, but realized that something might sound really bad on your computer, and it'll sound really good with headphones. So yeah, we'll talk about end products and speakers later. Okay, we're basically done with PA systems, but here's troubleshooting. If there's no sound coming out, which usually is the biggest issue, is everything on? Pretty straightforward. Are all the sliders up? Are all the mute buttons in the on position? Is the gain up as well? And then if all of those are for sure happening, you then need to go start at one end of the system and work through it. And this is like troubleshooting, swapping out cables, seeing what's bad. But yeah, that's about the best piece of advice I can give you. Yeah, question?
I know you may talk about it during the maintenance part, but when you store stuff, do you always turn all gains down and move all your sliders down, or do you just leave it?
Yeah, that is a good question. So when I'm not using my equipment, I usually do turn everything as low as possible. The other thing, and I'll talk about it with the maintenance stuff, is you want to keep your equipment in a dry room, because if there's any humidity or temperature changes, that's going to cause some rust on those transistors. And you may have had this happen where something sounds fine and you go to touch the volume knob and you get the scratchy sound. That's because there's rust within the thing. So one thing you can do is you can clean, they make a little solvent, you can spray in those and clean them with. But I also find that if you just do this a few times every once in a while, it'll also keep things clean a little bit. Yeah, and then, yeah. I don't know, did that answer it?
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit more about it too. But any other questions about troubleshooting, or if there's a certain thing that is always happening to you that you want to know about? Okay, if you want to talk later in private, So yeah, just to wrap up, there's a signal chain, goes from one end to the other, and just make sure that that is going through all the way and then it'll work. Okay, recordings, yay. Yeah, recordings. Recordings are, oh, I should go to this one. Okay, recordings are a closed system. Because they don't have a speaker, you can get away with a lot of things. You can use those really delicate microphones and put them in places that you couldn't do if you were trying to amplify things. But a recording system, basically you still have your microphone. It goes into what's called a preamp, which is a fancy term for a gain stage. If you think about this mixer up here, this mixer costs maybe $300. That gain at the top of that mixer maybe costs $15 or less than that, because there's 8 channels. But you can get a little box that'll make that electrical signal get bigger, and you can pay thousands of dollars per channel. And what that does, it removes the that's in your recording. It just makes it clean. So that's what a preamp usually goes through that. Sometimes this is also paired with a mixer or a processor. Sometimes this happens in your computer. And then ultimately it goes to the media source, a tape, an SD card, or your computer in general. So it's always a trade-off when you're making recordings of having good equipment and how much you want to pay for that, where you place it and what settings you put it on, and then after the fact, what you want to do for mastering or editing of it. So we're going to talk a bit about that. With equipment, my personal setup is I use these Octava microphones, which came from Russia. They're about, okay, I think they were $900 for 2 of them. I love them, they're pretty robust. And then I run those into a little Tascam unit. And so my whole setup is maybe like $1,000, and it sounds okay. You can obviously spend a fortune on microphones, and I've met people that do that. But you can also, in your program, you can use one of these. Who has one of these in your program already? Yeah, they're like standard. So the Zoom H4n and the Tascam DR40X, they're both really good systems. They're essentially that recording system that I showed you, that diagram, all in one little package. So instead of parting it out for $1,000 each, you can just have it all in one. And most of these just record straight to an SD card, which is like the best way to do it. And then you plop it out onto your computer as an MP3 file or whatever file you want. And they're relatively cheap. They're maybe $170 to $250. And so I use these all the time. The other thing that I've become quite fond of is this little guy called a IQ7 MS, made by Zoom. It's about $100 and it clips into the back of my iPhone. And I use it all the time during rehearsals because, I don't know if you, does anyone do this? You record your ensemble and then you play it back to them. If you don't, it's a great way to not only like stop explaining all the things that are wrong, but have them hear it, as well as kill a few minutes of class. And they love it. As soon as they're like, oh, the new trumps, you sound bad, the trump's like, oh, I want to play better too, you know? So like, it works. But so I throw this up and record a thing. What's really nice about this, if you think about the microphones in your iPad or your iPhone, they're like maybe the size of like the back of a pin or something. It's tiny, right? And so this has microphones that are at least 1/4 inch big, so they respond more warmly and more evenly than the smaller microphones. The other thing you can do is find a better app than Voice Memo. Voice Memo does a lot of compression. If you remember back to compression, that little knob, it does a lot of that. So that allows you to actually hear dynamic change instead of just everything being a flat volume of sound. Yeah. Cool. The other question I have for all of you is, why are you making recordings, right? Are you playing it for your ensemble? Or are you trying to play it for making some submission to Allstate? Or are you trying to make a good YouTube video page or something like that? These are all kind of things you need to think about when you're figuring out what system you want to use. They make a lot of good microphones that plug straight into your computer that you can give a kid and they can record their Allstate solo with. And that's perfect for that. But like you don't really need a $1,000 system if you're just going to play it back for your kids. The other thing to know is like if you're recording something to be played back on Facebook, it probably doesn't need to be as high quality as a professional recording, so you can probably get away with using slightly cheaper equipment or editing it differently. Yeah. Oh, the other thing I should mention, in these, there's a few different settings. Oh man, so there's MP3, things called codexes. Does anyone know what codex means? It means compression, decompression. So an MP3, basically what it does, if you imagine digitizing those sound waves, it turns into billions of ones and zeros. Compression allows you to squash it down in different ways. MP3 does it very aggressively and actually chops off data. But you can choose which codecs you want. MP3 is fine because it's a small file size, but you can have like an AIF file, and you can make a 1 hour recording that's about 8 gigs, which that works if you want that to do editing on, because there's a lot of fidelity in there. But you probably don't need that if you're just going to share it on your Schoology or Google school stuff. Cool. Okay, more listening to things. Let's do that. Actually, I wanted to have you hear the difference between a few of these. So I recorded our wind ensemble at Farmington, play a few bits of Arabian dances. So we're gonna first hear what an iPhone, just a straight up iPhone sounds like, and you're gonna really hear the muffly, mumbly compression sounds, and then we're gonna go to the IQ7, it'll sound a little bit better, and then we're gonna hear my professional system that I use. So again, here's the iPhone. So then plugging in these little cheap microphones on top, still using actually the voice memo app, it improves the sound just a little bit so we can hear that. Trumpets like biff their entrance now, right? Instead of it being obscured. So you can start hearing more fidelity and more things that are really good in the recording. So if we listen to the really, really nice microphones now, you're gonna hear, you're gonna really hear dynamic contrast as well in the whole system. I haven't found one that I love. I think the ones that you pay a few dollars for work the best. I don't have a specific one, a name one, but I know that this will work with basically anything because it's substituting like plugging in a headphone. So you can mess around and see. There's a lot of free ones too. Mainly if it records stereo and doesn't do compression, it probably should work as well. So yeah, it's a good question, and I did think about it, but didn't have time to find a one that I would recommend to everyone. here's the kind of cool part. So in my time at the 10-man concert hall, I spent a lot of time in the recording booth and seeing what we do for our setup. So this is kind of where you want to place your microphones to record a concert. So we use 6 microphones when we record. We use a pair of ORTF, which is a fancy French term. It basically is 2 microphones angled out in the hang loose kind of thing that imitate a left and a right ear. And so we fly those right up over the conductor's head, which is a great place if you want to record, because most of the time we as conductors are kind of balancing everything out to our ears in general. So that's what we use as a main system. Then we kind of capture the scope of the stage by having 2 microphones on the far side. We call those AV microphones. And then we have 2 ambient microphones, those really sensitive condenser microphones. We hang them about 40 feet back and 40 feet up in the air, and those really capture the sound of the hall. With all of your placements, it's a trade-off between clarity and blend. If you put your microphones right behind your conductor, it might sound exactly how the conductor hears it, but you're going to hear that clarinet player right there that won't, blend. Whereas if you put it out in the hall, you're going to hear more of a blended sound, although it's going to be more muffly. So if you have multiple sets of microphones, that's like the best way to do it, but you can kind of figure out where to place it. In general, when I record, I just put 2 microphones kind of half back in the hall and then tape off the area so people don't sit next to it with their kids. So to emphasize this, we're going to listen to a bit of the University of Minnesota play Dansen Final by Hinisterra, and we're going to first hear the ORTF. You can really hear the flute like sitting right in front in this recording. So here's the ORTF. When I went to grab these recordings, I was like, I hadn't heard a good ensemble for like a week or so, and I was like, holy crap, they got really good these past few years. So that's ORTF, and you can really hear the right up frontness. Then you have the AV pair, and it's gonna basically sound the same, except if you listen actually for the piano, you're gonna hear like the sound of the piano breathe a little bit more. You're gonna hear a little bit more wider vision. So here's the AV pair. You can also hear more of a bass that's coming off the edges of the stage and kind of low tubas and stuff like that. Then here's a little bit of the ambient that's sitting in the hall. You get the idea. And then you mix them all together, and that gives you this really high quality. You get the effect of the bigness of the ensemble as well as the close-up, and this is where the artistry of being a recording technician comes in, where you place your microphones and how you kind of level out each of those. So here's the final product. And if all of those sounded the same to you, it's okay. I spent a lot of time going back and forth. You mute one and then you listen to the other one. It's like, which one's better? I don't know. But it's kind of a refined thing, and I hope you kind of heard a little bit of a difference. These speakers aren't the best, but that gives you an idea of what we do at the 10-man concert hall. The last little bit about recordings is editing. We had a lot of classes about GarageBand and Logic and things like that. There's tons and tons of programs that you can do this on. One that's absolutely free and works on both Macs and PCs is Audacity. That's the logo right there. It's a little clunky, but it'll do everything you need. You can also use Logic if you have a Mac or GarageBand, Ableton Live, Pro Tools, or if you want to, Adobe. But yeah, so you can use those, and you might use your editing program to cut the ends of tracks and master them for things that you want, as well as blending the microphones like we just did. Yeah, question?
I've heard that Ableton Live is one of the only programs you can use live, like on stage, like you can make beats or something, you can bring it on stage. Is that true?
Yes, Ableton Live, it definitely is one of the programs that allows you to like hook in a synthesizer and make grooves on stage. I think it also kind of depends on what computer you're running it on. I know I've done gigs like where I've brought a synthesizer and played fake marimba and stuff like that and recorded it and edited it on stage live on my little Mac from 2014. But yeah, Ableton Live does that. I think Mainstage is the Logic version of that. A lot of marching bands use Mainstage for their synthesizers and samples. Yeah, so, yeah, I don't know a lot about that. I don't spend a lot of time performing with electronics, but I do a lot of time with recording. So, yeah, and if you want to come tell me about the pros and cons of any of these, I'd love to hear it as well. So, but you can kind of spend a lifetime on editing audio, so we're going to move on. Okay, what to buy, how to make it last. So, it's the same thing that you would tell any of your students, right? Don't buy it off eBay, right? Shop around, ask for an opinion, and do your research. Just Google the heck out of it and figure out why this one type of this thing and this other thing are $60 different, and if you need it. You're gonna learn a lot if you do that way. But you can also just ask around. A place that I have called and spent many hours talking to people is Metro Sound and Lighting. They're just off University in St. Paul. These guys have like done rock concerts for Metallica and everything and professional recording, and they just sit there all day waiting for you to call. And they'll talk to you forever, and they'll even like lend you their personal gear to try, and you can rent it real cheap and then decide if you want to buy it. They'll even come to the concert hall and set up your sound system for you and tune it and make it sound nice. But other places you can definitely go is, Growth Music, Eckroth, Schmidt, and Guitar Center. And all these people have good opinions, and if you take the time to ask, they'll probably tell you. I don't know so much about Guitar Center. I've had mixed things about that, but I'm sure there are good places for that too. But yeah, don't buy anything online unless you've tested it or have someone test it for you. I've bought mixers on eBay for cheap, and then they just crap out after like a year or so. So that's something to think about. Question?
Monoprice.com. You've been there. I buy most of my mic cables through them.
Yeah, Monoprice, they're like a really cheap source for cables.
You have to really
everything.
heavy-duty stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, B&H and Monoprice, there's a lot of online sellers that are definitely reputable and I would trust. I don't know, do they resell things?
I don't know if they do. I don't think Monoprice.
Okay.
But
Sweetwater, I think, resells things,
yeah.
and I've had problems with them. But I'm not bashing any online companies right now. But yeah, going to those companies, you can also call them. They have a person that's willing to sit there on the phone with you all day as well. And then little bit of advice I have is stick to the well-known brands, but then also realize that Roland and Fender are kind of like Nike, where you can buy $200 sneakers or you can buy $20 sneakers, and one's going to be better than the other. So you kind of have to do all of these. So there's no real quick, you buy this, it'll fix your things. But I will say also, if you're looking for like keyboard amps, realize what sound you're pushing through that amp. An amp is essentially the mixer, the amplifier, and the speaker in one box, right? And you're putting your guitar into it, or your bass. So if you need, if you're playing keyboard, you need a low end and a high end. So you need one that can handle both. So it has to probably have a big cone and smaller cones. Whereas if you're playing bass, you might just have a smaller cone. And you can also get into this for days and days and argue about it. But just kind of realize what you're buying and what you're using. Okay, last little bit, how to make it last, like we talked a little bit before, give it a home. Put it in a room that's for it, that's temperature controlled, humidity controlled if possible. And number your cables. I still need to do this at Farmington, but I want to number all of our cables, sign them out to a kid so that when they destroy it, I can charge them $16 for a new one instead of it coming out of my budget. But yeah, sign out to the kids. Learning to wrap cables is a really good way to make your cables last. There's a special way called over-under wrapping. Kinking them up like this will eventually cause things to break. In addition, buying cheap cables will do that too. And having those little Velcro straps are really nice as well. Yeah, that's about all I got. You can also just clean out your electronics every few years with a spritz of a cleaner spray. But in general, just buy nice things and take care of them as you would with an instrument, and your things will last as well for a long time. Cool. So if you actually have any questions or complaints and you want to tell them to me, you can always email me. And if you want to come up and talk, that'd be awesome. But thank you all for sitting here and listening to me talk.